Hello, my name is Melissa. I was asked to be on this panel by Matt. I am very excited to be on this panel with all of you. I am a person who works with children. I am a self-proclaimed flagrant supporter of human rights on the left and a very shameless anti-authoritarian, pro-feminist, anti-police violence activist. I'm here to talk about my opinions regarding the Occupy movement, in particular about diversity of tactics. Thanks. I apologize for not having a super well-polished speech prepared. I came directly from work. I did want to, I guess I wanted to preface what I was going to talk about, which is the idea of legitimacy, and I'll get to that. Okay, sure. How's this? Okay, I'll probably get louder as the minutes go by. One thing that I've heard on both sides of this panel so far is, well, I've heard a couple of things. One, I keep hearing the mention of violence. Violence is good, nonviolence is great, violence can be useful, it's not useful, and I think that I think that we can stick to talking about violence forever. I do think that the topic of violence can be a very narrowly construed one, and I think that Sean mentioned that in his first statement, and that if we look around the room, we can ask each other, what is violence? And we can look around this room and say, okay, this particular demographic believes that violence is this particular thing. I think that that also stymies us. I think that keeps us from thinking critically about action, about movement, and about struggle and liberation. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that also it's useful to ask ourselves, aside from, okay, the Kingian version of nonviolence, the Gandhian version of nonviolence, which it was mentioned earlier is a science, is a social science, is a spiritual practice. It's really important to not forget that nonviolence, particularly, I'll stick with what I know most of, nonviolence in the so-called civil rights movement in the United States was a very strategic one. Okay, it was a strategic one in terms of, okay, if we're going to think about Kazu's example of diversity of tactics, one being negotiation. The leaders, almost all men in the civil rights movement, negotiated with almost all men for space. They negotiated for the right to march. They negotiated for the military to come into small towns such as Selma and make sure that that police and firefighters couldn't continue to mow people down with fire hoses, get attacked by dogs, etc. Because they knew that, quite honestly, if there was no military, no state intervention, that those things would continue to happen, because they had been happening for already half of a century. If you look at the history of sundown towns, okay, if anybody in this room knows what a sundown town is, a sundown town is basically a town where if you are a black person in the early part of the century or the late part of the 19th century, if you're a black person caught in a particular town after sundown, you will be killed. You will be violently, brutally killed. Okay, so this is a history that people when they think about the civil rights movement and they think about nonviolence and they're like, oh, we were coming from this moral high ground. No, it was a very strategic goal, and it wasn't the only thing that won civil rights for black people in this country by any stretch. I'm not going to continue to talk about this. I just want to drop that as a little bit of food for thought. I mentioned nonviolence as a strategy because I think that the strategy is to attain legitimacy, and to attain not just legitimacy for ourselves, but legitimacy, American mainstream legitimacy. We've heard time and again, you know, let's just look at November 2nd. After the 2nd, you know, a barricade burned. Some people took over a building, and that was decried as violent. And the immediate arguments against these types of action, aside from they were violent, was that they were taking away the positive public support that we had worked so hard to get over the last couple of months. I won't deny if that's true, and I won't say if that's true or false. I don't really know. I don't really believe either, to be correct. I think that it's important that I think I outed myself earlier as a radical, as an anti-authoritarian. And I think that this is important for you to know, because when I talk about legitimacy, and I'll probably come back to this later on this evening, what I mean to say is that actually the Occupy Oakland movement does not need to ask for legitimacy from the mainstream. That in fact, the Occupy movement, what I hope soon becomes the decolonized movement, is in fact legitimate. And it is the people who have been reaping the benefits of the capitalist system for so long, who finally are like, oh my God, I lost my house and my iPod, who are finally coming to the forefront to fight. It is those people who need to come to us to say, how do we contribute to a legitimate radical restructuring and radical struggle? And part of that is going to be enforcing a diversity of tactics. Some of us are going to have to sit in, we're going to have to teach in, we're going to have to babysit. Some of us are going to have to go to work. Some of us are going to have to sabotage trucks. Some of us are actually going to have to actually shut down Wells Fargo and not symbolically shut it down. I'll just remind people really quickly that it was only, I'm sorry, just give me 30 more seconds. It was only about 3 weeks ago that the UC Berkeley police stated, I'm sure everybody read this quote, I can't remember the woman's name because I don't actually care about the police that much. This woman stated that in fact linking arms was a form of violence, people. That linking arms is a form of violence. So again, Kozu, to answer something that you said, I think that it is important that we do continue dialogue, and I think that it is important that we continue to work within the community, especially in Oakland. We have a lot of work to do. But I think that to keep talking about diversity of tactics and then to constantly bring up violence completely negates negotiation. It negates the sit-in, and it negates anything else that we need to do in order to actually get forward.